at my girlfriend's friend's engagement party, carrying 2 drinks across a marble floor, I overheard something that shattered everything I thought we were building. This is how one conversation destroyed her reputation and taught me what I actually deserved. Hey, this is Benjamin. 6 months with Harper, and I thought I had her figured out. You know how it is when you're falling for someone. Every little thing they do seems perfect, even the stuff that should probably worry you. But lately, something's been off. She'd get this weird look whenever we talked about anything past next weekend. The professional stuff started bugging me first. Harper would introduce me to her lawyer friends, and I swear she'd mumble my name and change the subject before anyone could ask what I did. At first, I figured she was just being considerate. Maybe she thought I'd feel awkward with a bunch of attorneys. But then it happened at her firm's happy hour, and again when we ran into her law school buddies at Ruby's on 5th. Same pattern every time. She'd light up talking cases and partnerships, then go quiet the second someone looked my way. This engagement party tonight was supposed to be different. Harper's friend Madison was getting engaged to some investment banker, and Harper had been talking about it for weeks. Big deal, apparently. Everyone from law school would be there, plus Madison's Wall Street crew. The kind of party where people wear their success like cologne. So I went shopping. Dropped $300 at Men's Warehouse for a suit that didn't make me look like I was headed to traffic court. Spent lunch breaks Googling stock market stuff and legal reforms. Even watched that documentary, Inside the Merger, KKR's biggest deal. I mean, come on, I was trying here. Harper had very specific ideas about tonight. She told me to introduce myself as Benjamin, not Ben. Said it sounded more professional. Then she went through this whole speech about mentioning the shop casually, like it was just part of my interests instead of, my actual career. I even heard her through the bathroom door, practicing different ways to say, this is Benjamin. He owns an auto repair business versus Benjamin works in the automotive industry. The venue was this place in Midtown, Meridian Hall or something, with marble floors and waiters in bow ties. $15 for a Stella Artois. And they look at you funny if you order it instead of their craft selection. I tugged at my collar and tried to look like I belonged. Harper ditched me the second we got there. Said she needed to congratulate Madison, but really she just melted into this cluster of women in designer dresses who all looked like they stepped out of Vogue. I watched her transform, shoulders back, different laugh. Even her voice got this fake quality I'd never heard before. So I headed to the bar. The bartender was this young guy, probably working his way through college, and we got to talking about his Honda Civic making weird noises. Normal conversation, the kind where nobody's performing. But while I waited for our drinks, her usual Sancerre, me with a beer, I kept hearing bits about relationships. These guys near me were talking about making partner. The women behind me were discussing vacation homes in East Hampton. Everyone's sizing each other up. Who'd made the most money? Who was dating whom? Who was moving up fastest? I caught fragments about dating too. Some woman saying how important it was to date strategically in your 30s, how you couldn't waste time on people who wouldn't advance your social position. Another guy laughing about his starter wife from college. The whole thing felt fake as hell. Everyone playing roles, saying what they thought would impress the right people. I grabbed Harper's Sancerre and my Stella, scanning the room for her laugh. She was still with those same women, but now they were sitting at a high table near the windows, heads bent together like they were planning a coup. I started walking over, ready to play my part in whatever show Harper needed. But something about their body language made me slow down. The way they kept glancing around, the intensity of their whispers, it felt serious. That's when I heard Harper's voice cut through the noise. Clear as day, talking about educational experiences and temporary situations. My name floated over, followed by laughter that didn't sound like the woman I'd been dating for 6 months. I stopped dead, drinks in hand, close enough to hear everything, but still hidden behind this marble pillar. And what I heard next made my stomach drop straight through those expensive floors.
Hey there, Harper here. Growing up in a split-level ranch with linoleum counters teaches you things about ambition that trust fund kids never learn. My dad fixed HVAC systems for 30 years, came home every night with grease under his fingernails and complaints about his back. My mom worked double shifts at Presbyterian Hospital just to keep us in decent clothes and pay for my SAT prep courses. I swore I'd never settle for that life. Law school was my ticket out. Every study group and networking event a step toward the kind of security my parents never had. It worked too. Landed at Morrison and Associates straight out of graduation, pulled down 6 figures by 28, bought a condo downtown where the doorman knows my name. Benjamin fit into my life like a comfortable intermission. Honestly, he was stable, paid for dinners at places like the Capitol Grill without checking his bank balance first, never asked me to split checks or suggested we stay in to save money. The physical stuff worked well enough, and he listened when I vented about difficult clients. For a while, that felt like enough. But dating someone is different from building a future with them, you know? Benjamin was teaching me things about what I actually needed in a long-term partner, things about compatibility, social positioning, professional advancement. Like how awkward it felt when he tried to join conversations about securities law or mergers. The way he'd nod along when my colleagues discussed vacation properties in Martha's Vineyard, clearly having no reference point. It wasn't his fault, but it made me realize how important it was to be with someone who could naturally fit into my world. Tonight's party was exactly the kind of event that clarified these thoughts. Madison's engagement to James represented everything I was working toward. 2 successful professionals building something together, combining their networks and resources, advancing each other's careers. That's what partnership was supposed to look like, honestly. I found Simone, Jessica, and Amanda at a table near the windows, already 3 glasses deep into Dom Perignon. These women understood the game. We'd all climbed from middle-class backgrounds to professional success, all dated our share of men who didn't quite fit our trajectory. Simone was telling us about her recent breakup with some high school teacher she'd been seeing. Said she finally realized she needed someone who could match her intellectually and financially, someone whose career complemented rather than contrasted with hers. The conversation flowed naturally from there. We'd all had these practice relationships, these learning experiences that taught us what we really deserved. Jessica brought up her engagement to Marcus. How relieved she felt to finally be with someone who understood her professional obligations. Someone who could hold conversations with her partners at firm events without her having to translate or make excuses. I mean, that's when it really hit me, you know? How much energy I'd been spending trying to make Benjamin fit into spaces he wasn't naturally comfortable in. So I started talking about Benjamin, how dating him had taught me so much about different social classes, about the importance of intellectual compatibility in a marriage. The girls were nodding along, understanding exactly what I meant about temporary learning experiences versus real future potential. It felt good to be honest about it, finally. Amanda laughed when I mentioned Benjamin's attempts to fit in tonight, the new Brooks Brothers suit, the way he'd been researching conversation topics all week. She said it was sweet, but also exactly the problem. If someone had to work that hard to blend with your world, they probably didn't belong in it naturally, you know? I described how awkward it felt introducing Benjamin to my professional contacts, how I found myself making excuses or changing subjects when people asked about his work. The girls totally got it. They'd all been there, dating down temporarily before finding their actual match. Simone asked if I was planning to upgrade soon, and honestly, the Dom Perignon made everything feel more transparent than usual. I heard myself saying yes, probably after I made senior associate next year. Said I'd learned what I needed to learn from this relationship, that Benjamin had served his purpose in helping me understand my own standards. These women were my real peers, the ones who understood ambition and strategic thinking. With them, I could be honest about needing a partner who enhanced rather than limited my professional trajectory. I mean, isn't that what everyone wants deep down? Jessica was describing her own educational relationships when I noticed the conversation had gotten quieter around us. Amanda was looking past my shoulder with this weird expression, and Simone had stopped mid-sentence. I turned to see what they were staring at, and there was Benjamin, standing about 10 feet away with 2 drinks in his hands and this completely blank expression.
The thing about overhearing something you're not supposed to hear is that your brain tries to protect you first. Like maybe you misunderstood, maybe they were talking about someone else, maybe you heard wrong. But Harper's voice was unmistakable, and my name kept floating over clear as anything. Educational experience. Practice relationship. Upgrading when she makes senior associate. Serve his purpose. I stood there like an idiot with our drinks, processing what I'd just heard. 6 months of thinking we were building something real, and she'd been treating me like some kind of social experiment. A temporary learning experience before she found someone worthy of her actual future. The worst part? How casual it sounded. Like discussing which restaurant to try next. Just Harper, explaining to her friends why she was planning to trade up from the mechanic who'd been buying her dinner and listening to her problems for half a year. Her friends had gone quiet, which meant they'd spotted me standing there. I watched them exchange those looks people give each other when someone's about to get hit by a bus. I walked over and put Harper Sancerre down on their table. Didn't slam it or make some dramatic gesture. Just placed it there quietly while they all stared at me like I was a bomb that might go off. Harper's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, embarrassment, calculation, then this forced brightness that probably worked great in court but looked ridiculous here. She started talking fast, introducing me to the girls like nothing had happened. This is Benjamin. Everyone, he was just getting us drinks. How sweet of him. Her friends managed some polite smiles but kept glancing at each other with those uncomfortable looks you get when someone steps in dog shit. Jessica mumbled something about needing the restroom. Amanda suddenly remembered she had to call her babysitter. Simone just stared down at her champagne like it held the secrets of the universe. Nobody was buying Harper's performance. I looked at Harper for a long moment, trying to find some trace of the woman I thought I'd been dating. But all I saw was someone scrambling to manage a situation that had gone off script. I told her I was going outside for some air. Said it quietly, no drama, just a guy who needed space to think. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but I was already walking away. The patio was empty except for a couple of smokers near the far end. I found a spot by the railing and looked out at the city lights, trying to make sense of what just happened. Anger would have been easier, but mostly I just felt stupid. Stupid for buying the suit, for researching conversation topics, for thinking Harper's weird behavior lately was just nerves. I've been performing for someone who saw me as a placeholder. While I was trying to become someone she could be proud of, she was already planning her exit strategy. A waiter walked by collecting empty glasses, and we nodded at each other. Regular people acknowledging regular people. Funny how that felt more genuine than anything that had happened inside tonight. Harper's heels clicked across the patio behind me, and I turned to face whatever explanation she prepared for this mess.
The walk from that table to the patio felt like forever. Jessica, Amanda, and Simone were all staring at me with these mortified expressions, like they just watched me accidentally set myself on fire. The entire conversation replayed in my head, every casual comment about educational relationships and upgrading, every laugh at Benjamin's expense. But honestly, by the time I reached the patio doors, embarrassment was shifting into something sharper. Benjamin had no right to eavesdrop on a private conversation between friends, you know? Who lurks around listening to other people's discussions and then storms off dramatically. It was manipulative behavior, honestly. And the way he just put that wine glass down and walked away, so passive-aggressive. I found him standing at the railing, looking out at the city like some tragic hero in a Nicholas Sparks movie. The whole pose irritated me, this wounded martyr act when he was the one who'd invaded my privacy and taken everything out of context. I mean, come on. I started with damage control, explaining that people say things in social situations they don't necessarily mean. Girl talk gets exaggerated, you know? When you're with friends, especially after Dom Perignon, conversations get more dramatic than they would normally. He had to understand that context mattered here. But Benjamin just looked at me with this flat expression I'd never seen before. Usually, he was so animated, so eager to engage with whatever I was saying. Now he seemed completely disconnected, so I tried explaining how those women brought out a certain competitive dynamic, how we all felt pressure to sound more successful and decisive than we actually were. The conversation had gotten away from me. I'd been performing for them more than expressing my real feelings about our relationship. But he wasn't buying any of it. Benjamin said he'd heard enough to understand exactly what I thought about him, about us. Said it wasn't about the context, or the champagne, or performing for friends. It was about the casual way I discussed trading him in for someone better, like he was a practice round before the real game started. He was right, of course, but I couldn't admit that without accepting responsibility for the entire situation. So I shifted tactics, pointing out that relationships naturally involve evaluation and growth. People assess compatibility over time. That's normal and healthy, honestly. Maybe I'd expressed it crudely tonight, but the underlying questions were legitimate ones any serious couple should be asking. When Benjamin listened to all of this without interrupting, which somehow made it worse than if he'd argued back. When I finished explaining, he just said he was done. Not angry, not dramatic, just finish with us. The finality in his voice caught me completely off guard. I'd expected negotiation, discussion, maybe some wounded feelings that could be managed over time. Instead, he was walking away like I meant nothing to him, like 6 months could just be erased with one overheard conversation. But then he turned back, and what he said next cut deeper than anything else that night. He told me I was exactly like those people inside, performing success instead of living it, treating people like accessories to enhance my image. Said he felt sorry for whoever I upgraded to next because they'd never know if I actually cared about them or just their LinkedIn profile. Then he walked away, and I was standing there alone on that patio, feeling smaller than I had since law school. I returned to the party to find Jessica, Amanda, and Simone huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. They looked up when I approached, and Jessica asked if everything was okay with this bright, fake concern that made my stomach turn. I told them Benjamin and I were fine, just a small misunderstanding, but nobody seemed convinced. The story spread faster than I could have imagined. Within a week, I was hearing variations of it from law school acquaintances I barely kept in touch with. Somehow the details had gotten more damaging in the retelling. I was the lawyer who called her mechanic boyfriend educational, who planned relationship upgrades like career moves, who laughed about men being stepping stones. My dating life became a disaster almost overnight. 3 months later, I went on a date with this corporate attorney from Skadden ARPs, exactly the kind of guy I thought I wanted. Dinner at Le Bernardine, conversation about SEC regulations, everything perfectly aligned on paper. But halfway through the appetizer, he asked if I was the woman from Madison's engagement party. Said his friend James had told him about Harper from Morrison and associates who treated relationships like business transactions. The date ended before dessert. Then there was the investment banker from Goldman who seemed promising until he mentioned he'd heard I was shopping for upgrades. And the federal prosecutor who straight up asked if I planned to trade him in when something better came along. Men in my professional circle either knew the story directly or heard whispered warnings from their friends. A year later, I'm still dealing with the fallout. Madison's wedding last month was torture. All the same people, all the same careful conversations that stopped when I joined the group. Women who used to include me in their networking events now keep their distance, afraid I might evaluate their husbands out loud or share their private relationship concerns with a wider audience. The worst part, how the story got twisted to make me sound like some kind of social climber who forgot her roots, when really I'd worked harder than any of them to escape the financial uncertainty I grew up with. But that nuance gets lost when you're reduced to a cautionary tale about women who think they're too good for the men who care about them. I see Benjamin sometimes at Blue Bottle near my office. He nods politely when our eyes meet, but there's nothing behind it. No anger, no curiosity, nothing. Word is he's dating someone new, a nurse from Mount Sinai who comes to his shop sometimes. They look happy together in that easy, uncomplicated way I used to think was settling, but now recognize as something I never had with anyone. He's moved on completely, while I'm still living with the consequences of one champagne-fueled conversation that revealed more about my character than I ever intended to share.